Good morning, good afternoon, good evening out there, YouTube community. Today's video is for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. If you're one of the old school gamers like me and you've got these older systems, don't throw your controllers away when they start getting unresponsive or the controls start getting sticky. Unlike Xbox controllers and PlayStation controllers that now need inverted Torx bits and special bits to remove the screws from pulling them apart, they are small. But at least with the Super Nintendo controller, you can use an electronics repair kit. I picked mine up from Radio Shack. Unfortunately, Radio Shack went out of business and they closed all their stores. These are, really the only tools you'll need. These are pretty simple devices. You will need some isopropyl rubbing alcohol and some cotton swabs. There's a CVS right up the road from my house, so I usually just do my HBA needs at CVS because it's a mile from the house. Gas is $4 a gallon. It's not exactly rocket science why I go there. Plus, they're usually in stock. I mean, and as you can see, the controller does have some buildup on it, and that's actually what causes the unresponsive controls. The oils and dirt in your skin eventually will build up over time in the cracks and crevices of the controller, and eventually will get into the rubber pieces that are designed to touch the motherboard to send the inputs from the controller back to the console. Okay, so as you can see, I am removing their 5 little Phillips screws. The only tool I recommend for this that I do not have would be a magnetic tray for holding the screws, because there's also 2 rods or little pins that hold the bumpers, okay, the right and left bumper. Those can roll around and you can lose them very easily. I know Harbor Freight often gives coupons where they will give you a free 4-inch magnetic tray specifically for holding screws and bits and things like that. With a purchase of something else with their coupons that they give out in the mail, you could probably find something like that at AutoZone, Advance Auto, O'Reilly's, Napa, Tractor Supply, Lowe's, Home Depot. I mean, anywhere tools are sold. I just happen to like Harbor Freight, so I get a lot of my stuff from Harbor Freight. That's where my surveillance system comes from. It's a surveillance system that we used when I worked for Kmart. So I knew it was a dependable, reliable system, meaning it was worth the $320 some after sales tax that I spent on it when I originally purchased it a few years ago after my house got broken into and I started getting yard jobs done. Okay, but there you see you got the motherboard. Okay, make sure to pay attention to the directions of the wiring, because if you crimp the wiring over time or you wrap the cords around the controller, that actually breaks the wiring and will destroy the controller. Okay, here is the pins that you got to watch for the bumpers. Okay, you don't necessarily have to pull the pin. You can pull the bumper, but once you pull the bumper, notice the pin falls right out. Okay, there's nothing holding it in. Now, I don't have the magnetic tray, so I'm just going to put it inside the bumper. Oops. We'll try to do that anyway. Now it's going to be like picking up an ice cube off the linoleum floor. I'm going to get 30 minutes of cardio. All right. Okay, but now if my camera gets in there, all right, so see, that's the buildup I'm talking about. This is the oils and dirt that collect on your skin. Okay, this is what actually contaminates the controller over time, in addition to dust and moisture. Okay, you'll have these are the rubber bumpers. Okay, there's going to be different designs for these in your controllers. They are designed to be springy, so that when you push the bumper, they flex and push the bumper back. All right, this is also true for the buttons, the start button, the A, B, Y, and X buttons, the select button, and your directional pad. Okay, and it's important to not break any of these wires. You do not want to break these wires at all. I'm going to be very careful moving this stuff out. Okay, but here's your motherboard, essentially. See where your inputs are at? They're all marked too. Okay, here's your rubber pieces for your directional pad start select and your buttons. And notice, okay, you'll notice there is lavender with arrows, as well as a purple. And notice the buttons only fit one way. All right. Now the directional pad can go in pretty much, I think, in any direction. Like, I don't see any little teeth that hold it in place. Okay. If my camera can get on it. You won't necessarily have to get all the buildup off the plastic. All right. What you will have to do, though, is get the dust and the buildup off of these little black rubber areas, because that's what actually makes contact on the board, and that's where the dirt and dust and oils transfer and corrode these terminals over time. All right, once they get to a certain level of corrosion, they'll become unresponsive. That's where the isopropyl alcohol comes in. Isopropyl alcohol evaporates at room temperature. I spilled a little bit of it, but and it will not hurt or harm the contact points of this at all. It'll completely evaporate and dry, and you will still be able to reuse your controller afterwards, and you may find that you have regained your responsiveness. Let me see if I can get this thing right. But essentially, to clean them, all right, the camera's a little blurry, but you should still be able to see it. All right, you just want to wipe it like that, real light pressure. It doesn't have to be anything heavy, and you don't have to do the entire board. You only got to do the contacts. Okay, now mine is pretty clean because I've already cleaned it once. So we're going to go over the select and start buttons. The reason I'm doing the video is I actually put my bumpers back in incorrectly and they wouldn't spring back. Okay, now that I've actually cleaned all of it, if I can get it on the camera, and I get the camera to focus, you might be able to see I've got a little bit of dirt left. Okay. You might be able to just make that out. Now this is where it's really going to shine. It's not so much on these contacts because I've already cleaned them once. But you'll see how quickly it builds up on the rubber, like a car tire, real fast. Okay? These little rubber pieces are absolutely horrendous. I've already cleaned them once and I'm still taking it out. All right, you do not got to get these perfect, obviously. But you can tell even with the camera blurry, look at that. That's how much over the years. I've had this Super Nintendo since the 90s. You're looking at like 20 plus years, 30 plus years of buildup. Okay, because I've never cleaned these controllers. The controller just became unresponsive tonight. Okay, now as far as reassembly, because my controller is functional, so I'm not worried about getting it perfect. You do not have to get it perfect and immaculate clean. This is a normal routine maintenance that you'll probably have to do on the controller if you continue to use the console for many years to come. I'm a gamer. I intend to use it for years to come, so that's most likely going to happen. I also have a toasted Xbox 360 over there with a bad hard drive, but I have an old Xbox 360 Pro that I know how to clean the fans and clean the CPU to prevent the 3 red rings of death. I just need a power cable for it. So at some point I may be going back to Xbox Live and playing some of my old 360 titles as well, because I'll be doing a video on how to take it apart and clean it. Because there might actually still be a couple 360 Pros out there that are still alive. All right, so reassembly. Now notice, I didn't take the buttons out, but I'm going to focus on those real quick so you can see how they have like teeth or pins. They only fit one way. Each button fits in each specific location, even though they're not marked. All right. As far as the start and select, they're just on a little rubber piece and a little pin right there in the center, molded right into the plastic. We're going to put the D-pad back in. Okay, this green one is for the buttons. You'll notice there are molded pieces and pins for it to fit only one way. Okay. Now, as far as the D-pad, once again, pretty simple. It only fits one way. It's got a little guide and a pin for the rubber. Okay, then you got your board. And see where the screws hold the controller together. The board is molded to fit into it. Okay, we got to get the wire back the way it was originally installed. All right, like that. Okay, now the bumpers, which I already messed up once, so this is going to be a learning process for me. The left bumper. So bear with me on this one, because this one I got to test before I actually put the controller together and verify that it's working. Or else I'm going to have to do this again. Uh-oh. Maybe a pair of needle nose pliers might not be a bad idea if you're like me and you have a little bit of problems with your dexterity. All right. All right, it looks like it's making contact. I would say that little circle inside the bumper is going to want to make contact with the rubber piece. All right. Okay, so see how that's springing back. All right, that's what you want. Once the controller is fully assembled, you want to make sure it's still doing this. So now we're going to try the right bumper. And while I haven't pulled my Sega Genesis controllers apart, I actually need a power cable for my Sega Genesis too. The power cable that I had with it, which I believe was an aftermarket, was heating up while plugged into my surge protector and the unit was powered off. So I went ahead and erred on the side of caution that it had a short in it internally somewhere, and I unplugged it. At some point I may be doing a video for this for Sega Genesis controllers as well, if I get one that is sticking or unresponsive. Okay, now with these screws, because you're taking a steel screw into plastic, you got to be gentle to not cross thread them. So use very light pressure threading them in. You will feel them snug when they are tight. Do not over torque them. You will strip the controller out and the screw will fall out. All right, you want to torque them evenly, very similar to anything else because you're applying pressure to everything. So if once you do one side, think of it like a car when you're torquing down lug nuts. Once you do one on the opposite side. Okay, and you'll feel them when they tighten up. Once you got them. Now see, and Phillips screws are also designed so you can't over torque them without stripping them. So if you start skipping your Phillips head on the screw, that means it's torqued down all the way. Okay, so we've done left to right. Now we're doing top and bottom of the controller. And these concepts can be used with Xbox 360 regular original Xbox controllers, as well as pretty much anything that's assembled. If you're getting an unresponsive thumbstick, that does require a soldering kit, which I do not know how to solder. But an unresponsive button, the motherboard and the button itself may just need cleaned. So if you've got an unresponsive 360, Xbox One, PlayStation generation controller, these tips could also help you there too if you've got the right tools. The important thing is to make sure you have the right tools for the job. Okay, so I've got all 5 torqued down. So the objective here, got a little bit of a gap, and my bumpers are not springing anymore. So I have something that moved. And we're going to have to open it up again. And that's why you always want to test your resolution. Because the games I typically play do not use the left and right bumper on the Super Nintendo, but a lot of titles do. Like I play a lot of Breath of Fire 2, a lot of Tecmo Super Bowl, and a lot of Super Punch-Out and Mario Kart. Now, Mario Kart does use the bumpers. One of the things I love about Mario Kart is Mario Kart's been teaching children that the world isn't fair since 1992. Anybody who's been in 8th place in Mario Kart and suddenly gets a lightning bolt, the other 6 AI opponents and the other player you're playing against know exactly what I'm talking about. Which migrated over to the 64 with the blue Koopa Troopa shell with spikes on it. All right, so we got to find out why my controller had a gap. My guess is the wiring may have moved or jumped, or I might have bumped something. Okay, so now if you go to pull this off and you notice it's not going to come off, don't force it. You have screws that are still threaded in slightly. If you try to force it, it will break. All right, so let's check. Okay, so it's springing properly. All right, I'm going to turn this over real quick. All right, now looking at this, and like I said, look how little these screws are. These are very easy to lose. I may have found the problem. It looks like the pins for the bumpers also have to line up with the top of the unit. Or, well, technically the bottom of the unit, because it's upside down. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and set my little stand out on the key screen. Oh, I see what the problem is. I have the bumpers installed upside down. They only fit one way. They're backwards. The left is on the right and the right is on the left. Okay. All right, this is the left bumper. So, it should fit on this side. Trial and error, folks. Rome wasn't built in a day. WD-40 gets its name because it took 40 attempts for the company to actually get the right chemical formula for it to do what it does. That's why the 40 is contained in WD-40. Okay, now I have them upside down, so we went from backwards to upside down. They are springing, and I have no gap, but we want to fix that. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, so the controller is held this way. This is the left bumper, so it will only fit. Oh, wow, that is the right way. I would have thought the L would have been facing the controller, to the top of the controller, but no, it fits as if you're looking at it. So I did have it right. Because if you look at these, they only fit, they're designed to fit one way. As you see, the notches are cut differently on them. I mean, so you don't even have to necessarily be a master mechanic or electrician to do this, because the way Nintendo originally engineered this, everything only fits one way. So, I mean, you can be just an average handy person and be able to do this. And there we go. We got no gaps. Bumper is springing on each side. And we're ready to put the screws back in. And then we're going to go ahead and give it a test on Tecmo Super Bowl 3, which if you can hear the music in the background, that's for the menu screen, because I got a season with the Detroit Lions, because I got Barry Sanders. And I picked up Deion Sanders from free agency, as well as Rod Woodson in a trade, because you get 3 weeks of trading in that game also, even though it was 1995. Many players don't know Tecmo Super Bowls series, from the regular Nintendo to the Super Nintendo, is what gave birth to 2K Sports and Madden and all the different Joe Montana football and all the different companies that came up, because Tecmo was the football game to utilize the NFL Players Association with the real names and rosters of the teams that existed during that time. Kind of like the way GoldenEye 007 for Nintendo 64 is what gave birth to the popularity of first-person shooters and then spawned Duke Nukem, Hexen, a bunch of different type of first-person video games for the 64 and the PlayStation, Killzone, Call of Duty. But the popularity that brought it all to light was Rareware's GoldenEye 007 for Nintendo 64. RPGs, Final Fantasy VII, hands down. Final Fantasy VII is one of the only video games I've ever seen that says possibly the greatest game ever on its cover. Okay? So when people say they're gamers, yeah, they might be able to put up the stats, but they don't know the history of gaming. When I say I'm a gamer, it's because I love video games. Okay? All right, so my next game is Green Bay. All right, so the B button's working. I'm able to back up. My up and down is working. Okay. We want season game. Auto skip to the next game. Cincinnati beat Cleveland. Oh, these scores are randomized, so even some of the worst teams in the NFL could still make it to the playoffs and possibly the Super Bowl. Like it's all randomized. I got my quarterback back. All right. Use two hands for a moment. Okay, so we're going to check to see which quarterback has better physical condition. All right, and my Y button's working. All right, so Browning Nagel's in a little bit better condition. Let's check our defense. All right, now normally I don't do kickoff returns right out of the gate, but I'm going to do that because I'm making this video and I want to test my resolution. I'm not going to try to break any tackles. I'm just going to try to use the D-pad because that's what was sticking with mine. So I'm merely testing the resolution here. Normally you got to mash the A button to break tackles. Touchdown. Yeah, I'd say it's working.